This is a travel. This is a carry. And this is basketball in 2025. Seriously, what has happened to the beautiful game of basketball that I grew up playing? Sure, I get that the game has evolved and rule changes that favor flair are inevitable, but you cannot sit there and tell me that you're enjoying this current trend of basketball in America and also think that we're heading in the right direction. It's one thing that the NBA allows for a pretty egregious interpretation of the rules, but the fact that we're literally teaching this to young athletes, it's baffling to me.
What? Dude, how is this a carry? How is this a carry?
Is this your idea of evolution and players being more skilled? And before you say,
bro, you just gotta grow with the times and you just gotta move on as the game evolves.
No, I don't. I've already done a video on social media influencers and the impact they've had on the game of basketball, but today I want to focus in on one particular aspect that I believe, if gone unchecked, could be catastrophic for the sport as a whole. Or maybe not, who knows? The first thing we have to address is the evil, unholy, God-forsaken, mythological gather step. So go ahead, gather around. This wretched beast has haunted me and the rest of the world for the past decade and is 90% of where all issues around traveling come from. Before we get too far, it's important to understand that different levels of basketball have their own different sets of rules. Literally the worst idea ever. Just make a universal set of rules that can filter from the top down. That way we can all be on the same page, but I guess that would be too simple, so I don't know, me, I guess. So when we're talking about these issues, I'm gonna do my best to talk about which rules are relevant in specific leagues, but typically the conversation revolves around FIBA rules, high school rules, and NBA rules. Now, back to the gather step. The gather is defined as a step that a player has taken after they've gained control of the dribble. Well, in the NBA and FIBA anyways, because you know what? There is no gather step in high school. This is one of the biggest issues I see with this style of content. 90% of the players watching these videos are either high school players or below, and unfortunately, once the player gains control of the basketball, the next step will count towards their legal movement limit. Which means in high school, you can control the ball and effectively take one step while that's happening and one more as your pivot foot. In FIBA, you can gather the ball and then effectively take 3 steps, the 0 step, and then 2 after. In the NBA, who knows, right? And if you thought that the gather step madness stopped there, oh my sweet, sweet child, you have a lot to learn. One of the main contentions of the gather step is that it's very difficult to discern when it's actually occurring or people are being intentionally obtuse. Don't get me wrong, this is a pretty tough rule to understand the technicalities of, especially in real time, but there has to be some form of good faith explanation when it comes to understanding these rules. Otherwise, it turns into what we have now, which is basically. So here's my issues with determining when the gather occurs. When looking at the steps, once the ball is in a controlled position, most players and coaches would be able to accurately identify if a move is a travel. The difficulty comes in determining when the dribble actually ends. For example, if I told you that the dribble ended right here on this frame, then we would all be able to count the steps and easily determine the legality of the move. But if I told you the dribble technically ended here, then this same example would have 2 very different outcomes. Which tells me that people aren't generally confused about the gather step rule, but more so determining when the dribble actually ends. And also each league's interpretation of that very rule. And I don't blame them. The high school rulebook states that a dribble ends when A, the dribbler catches or causes the ball to come to rest in one or both hands. B, the dribbler palms or carries the ball by allowing it to come to rest in one hand. C, the dribbler simultaneously touches the ball with both hands. In FIBA, it's pretty much the same thing, except with a few additions, notably that the ball comes to rest in the dribbler's hands, even for a brief moment. And lastly, the NBA. Again, who knows? And that's only the first problem of a much larger epidemic, because the next culprit is all the egregious carrying. While it's true that most leagues here in America have become incredibly lax with the carry violation, it doesn't mean that we should be learning it at the foundational level or that we should be told that it's legal to begin with. It's not legal to put your hand underneath the ball while you're dribbling it or to palm the basketball, even if you do get away with it. I break games down all the time over on the second channel, and I can promise you, this is happening way too much. Now I know influencers like to promote pocket dribbles, but one could say they're getting a bit too carried away with it.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
As we looked at earlier, the dribble ends when the ball comes to rest in one or both hands. And this is the part that people are getting away with more and more. Yes, pocketing and having the ball in your hands for more time is ideal, but being able to get by your defender without carrying or manipulating the rules is essential if you're looking to have a long, successful career in basketball. Being able to find success using the fundamentals means that if you're in a league where the referees are actually letting you get away with carries or violations, then that just becomes icing on the cake. But it shouldn't be what you have to rely on for your success. I'm a testament to this very topic, and I'm sure every single person that played against me overseas is punching a wall right now talking about what a hypocrite I am. I definitely got away with my fair share of carries and travels while I played, but I'm advocating that young people understand there's a difference in using the rules to your advantage when they're available, but not building your game off of these unpredictable outliers. Trainers, coaches, referees, and league organizers should also stop normalizing this because it's setting our young people up for failure. Getting away with 1 to 2 carries a game is completely different than spending hours and hours practicing a move that's literally illegal in the league that you're playing in. For example, Dev in the Lab. I think you're by far one of the very best basketball content creators of all time. But this little sub-zero move of yours is the bane of my coaching existence. Now, obviously this one particular example isn't ruining basketball on its own, but it goes to show how much we've normalized and made carries kind of mainstream. Hesitations and moves can be done without the carry, and that's why it frustrates me even more. But hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, it's time for everyone's favorite speedrun segment, this time brought to you by Manta Sleep. All right, quick timeout before our speed run, but there's one thing that I need after 400 hours of watching egregious travels and carries without a whistle. It's a nap, but not just any nap. I'm talking about a pro nap. That's what Manta Sleep is all about. The pro nap movement. Their masks are designed with a premium feel, fully adjustable eye cups, and blackout comfort so you can actually fall asleep fast, stay asleep, and wake up recharged. No light sneaking in, no awkward pressure on your face, just pure nap greatness. And trust me, if you're gonna be debating the gather step for 3 straight hours, you need one of these bad boys to recover. So do me a favor, go to mantasleep.com, use my code for 10% off, and join the pro nap movement. Because the only step that I'll never call a travel is stepping into a nap. Thanks again to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video, and let's speedrun some travels. Okay, thanks for paying the bills, sponsorship me. I mean, it's obvious why the referee didn't call this one. It's clearly in 13 pixels, so legal. Oh, this one's a classic right here. This is from NBA 2K14. People are gonna tell you the video games aren't realistic, but this is exactly what they allow in the NBA, so legal in my opinion. I remember seeing this on Shacked in a Fool years ago. And there's a common misconception here. Everyone thinks that Dirt is traveling. What they're not understanding is his kneecaps are actually disintegrating before our very eyes. That's what's really happening, so legal. Oh, this is the classic. If it ends in a dunk or a highlight play, you don't call it, so yeah, completely legal. You know how referees, especially the ones online, will say, if you're not gaining an advantage, we're not going to call it? I guess technically he's not gaining an advantage. I think you still got to call that. But hey, it's the NBA, so legal. The worst part about this one is you can argue that it's legal only because how people are so comfortable with saying if the ball is in your hand and still spinning, it doesn't count as a gather, just because he could at any moment put the ball back on the ground. So technically this is another issue of like, where does the gather actually begin? But either way, NBA, so legal. Again, very similar play. Where does he actually gather the ball? If you're at any other level, FIBA included, they're most likely just going to call this a travel. NBA, legal. Looking into the future here, this is the NBA, so it's going to be legal, but let's see what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nice. NBA plus Steph Curry, so double legal. Oh, this one's another classic. Love it. I don't know how this happens so often in the NBA. It's just baffling to me, and it's just funnier when it doesn't get called. Yeah, my eyes are burning. So, why does any of this matter? Mainly, I'm a massive hater that saw one too many rage bait posts online and I've never been able to recover. I first noticed this a couple years ago whenever I posted a video on Threads of a player jumping from behind the three-point line and shooting a layup. It was one of my very first posts on Threads, and to this day, it's my most popular one by far. What I realized is actually how easy it is to rage bait people online and basically engagement farm and cause dumb arguments, but not really solve the problem or have an honest conversation. Since that wasn't my intent, I decided not to go down that pathway of audience capture, which we talk about a lot, and instead, one of the reasons I decided to make this very channel, to hopefully better educate the basketball community and offer some semblance of normal conversation other than you dumb mother effer, you don't know the rules and you've probably never played organized basketball, go eat a brick. Yes, that's an actual comment that I received for thinking that jumping behind the three-point line and shooting a layup before you touch the ground is worth 3 points. Also, I'm allergic to bricks. The majority of content online around this subject are basically posts like these. Ones that you can point to an NBA player or a skills coach using an illegal move and getting away with it and telling you gotta add it to your bag. Or maybe you post a video online about a very controversial play and then act like people are literal idiots for having a different interpretation for when the gather actually happens. It's just the perfect catalyst for rage baiting people into engagement. You can find clips of players getting away with insane things on the basketball court, but we shouldn't be using the exceptions as the rules. Claiming to be making things more simple and helping people play within the rules is actually the exact opposite of what's happening. You're farming engagement and you're calling people mentally handicapped if they disagree with you in the comments. Shoutouts to MDW. No, I'm not slow just because I think the gather step should be applied a little bit more strictly. I really just think there are better ways for us to have these conversations rather than what's currently happening online. And I do think MDW is elite at what he does and actually does know more about footwork and basketball rules than most people in the world. But when you're unwilling to be challenged or possibly be wrong in the comments of the videos, it just makes it really hard to push these conversations forward in a positive way. Most times you look in the comments and people are walking away even more confused than they were before or just angry. And as always, to any of you that I mention in these videos, always happy to have a conversation. Anyways, since the NBA is the only league in the world that plays so fast and loose with its rule interpretations, it makes it so much more difficult for young players to understand what's relevant to them and how they can apply that to their high school or college levels. In high school, if you pick the ball up and then take 2 steps, you're more than likely going to be called for a travel. I don't care what any viral video says. If you pick up the ball and then come to a 1-2 stop and then you lift up your pivot foot, yeah, you're likely going to be called for a travel. If you take 6 steps with a hang dribble and then you gather into a shot attempt or a layup, yeah, you're likely going to be extradited to China because of the Great Wall and all the steps. Why did that somehow feel racist? So, going forward, I'd like to challenge all basketball content creators to be mindful of all the things we're posting in regards to rules and encourage healthy debates and conversations. That's how people actually learn. Not just telling them they're dumb for disagreeing, but actually having enough perspective to understand if this many people still don't know the rules around traveling and carrying, maybe the rules are too ambiguous and we should advocate for a change. Seriously, Adam Silver, consider making the league rules more in line with every other league in the world. I'm kidding. Because if there's one thing that the NBA hates more than defense, it's common sense. I want to give a huge thanks to all my channel members over here and also over on the second channel. Obviously, all of the Patreon members and to our founder, Butch, and all of our mid-range masters. You guys are the reason I'm actually able to make all these videos, and I really appreciate it. And now this has become a full-time job for me. So I appreciate you guys. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy, and let me know what you think about the carries and the travels down below and what you think our next video should be on. Thanks guys, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.